Grace Park. She's a co-founder and president of DocDoc. Grace is and one of the world's first patient intelligence company. She brings with her more than 19 years of leadership experience, nearly 13 of which was spent in international healthcare in Fortune 500 companies. Prior to DocDoc, Grace held leadership positions at Medtronic, most recently as the managing director for its ASEAN operations, leading the company to expand its footprint for medical technology in these markets. Grace began her career as an Army officer after graduating from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and served for 5 years, leaving as a captain. Grace holds degrees from Harvard Business School and Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. So with that, I would like to bring on Grace. Hi, Grace.
Hi, Malcolm.
How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Can I have some slides to share if I
Sure.
could see?
Just give me a second. I will give you the access. Just give me a second. And by the way, Grace is tuning in from Singapore. And with that, Grace, you may share a little bit about yourself, and then you can carry on with your sharing.
All right, very good. Well, thank you so much. And, just wanted to give a big shout out to all the speakers. There's just so much wisdom, and just want to give them all the kudos. Under this umbrella topic of empowerment from within, I heard some common themes that had spread throughout each of the speakers. And so what I like to do is also to reinforce those within my presentation as well. So I have to admit that I'm still a work in progress, but I'm happy to share my journey so far with you. And the topic of my session is called Finding Your Calling. And it sounds quite daunting. So what I wanted to do was actually break it down into 3 bite-sized concepts. So using leadership principles or frameworks to tackle this topic. And firstly is to look at, what are your beliefs? Who is it that you want to be? And then from these beliefs of what do you want to say and do, what are your actions? And lastly is from who you are and what you do, is that what you have, is that meaningful for you? So one of the first business books that I read was this book. It's one of the bestsellers called Good to Great. And it was a research study of some of the top companies. And one of the common themes in these top performing companies was that they had a company mission statement, a vision statement and a mission statement. And so I thought, well, to be a top performing company, why don't I create my own personal mission statement? It's a way to define who I want to be, not being specific about, what career path I choose. Would I be a cook or an architect? But in a general higher level sense, and defining success in my own way, and not just, through my parents or how society defines success. And so this is what I had created, is to be a leader of character and to make a significant positive impact to society. It's pretty bold, I admit. And there was just no room to be a victim in any way. With this kind of a statement, there was no time to feel sorry for myself. And what it did was, as I created this in my early 20s, it has guided me throughout the years, all throughout. And so whenever I felt lost or been in wilderness years, this mission statement helped me point in the right direction. It has definitely helped guided me. But, even though I had such a bold personal mission statement, it doesn't mean that limiting beliefs never entered my mind. So this is what Google says when I searched limiting belief. This is what popped up on top. These are thoughts, opinions that one believes to be the absolute truth. they tend to have a negative impact on one's life by stopping them from moving forward and growing on a personal and professional level. And so I want to share with you one of my limiting beliefs, and it happened actually at a pretty pivotal stage in my life. I was applying to university, and I was in the midst of my search, and my parents had actually encouraged my younger brother to check out West Point, the United States Military Academy. I was quite curious because I've never heard about the school. And you see, my parents had lived through the Korean War when they were children, and the heroes of the Korean War, these generals, were actually graduates of West Point. And so I thought to myself, well, if this school is good enough for my brother to check out, then it's good enough for me as well. And so I contacted the school and asked for an admissions catalog. And a few weeks later, this is what arrived in the mail. This is the front cover of the admissions catalog. And you could probably imagine what my first thought, my limiting belief that I had. It was, I won't fit in because I don't look like them. But I decided that, it took a long time for this catalog to arrive into, to receive this. And so I decided to just ignore the photos and just read the catalog. And what I read actually inspired me. West Point develops leaders of character. And I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to learn how to be a leader. So long story short, I actually accepted or applied, and then I got accepted there. And soon, a few months later, I enrolled and was on campus there. And you could imagine that there were numerous moments to be tested. I try to not only contain my own limiting beliefs, like why was I there, or I was just not good enough to be there, I was not smart, or whatever these limiting beliefs that came to mind, but also those of others, right? At West Point, every cadet has to choose a sport. And so I chose judo as mine because I figured, let's be practical here. Women only make up 10% of the corps of cadets. And I thought it might make sense for me to learn how to defend myself. I've never done judo before, ever. But it was quite curious because here I was at a military school where the whole concept of military was brand new to me, and no one in my family had done it before. I've never been involved in that that profession, or my family's never been a part of this. And and the academic curriculum was actually also quite intense. And here I was showing up at practice every day, getting beat up and suffering. And so here again, my limiting beliefs or thoughts that was going through my head was, I'm just not good enough. All of these other cadets as part of this judo team started learning the sport when they were 6 years old. How am I going to learn hundreds of moves before my first tournament? But, it was actually through the support of the other judokas there who had saw that, that I was having these sort of self-doubts. I borrowed their self-belief in me, basically, and they taught me 4 simple moves. And I decided, okay, I will just show up, take it one step at a time. And there I was at the first tournament. And surprisingly, I actually won. And we had a very rigorous tournament schedule. And I saw myself actually winning tournament after tournament, which then led to the nationals competition, of which I had won 3rd place all 4 years, and then won All-American honors. And so all of this added to a virtuous cycle, which led me to be invited to the Olympic Training Center. I never expected this, right? But it was a virtual cycle in which more doors had opened up unexpectedly. And looking back to that moment, what I had done was focus in on areas in which I could control, because everything else was just deemed as noise. And by the way, I just love our our event title today, Empower Within, it's just such a great message, because our innermost thoughts, what we choose to accept as truth, impact our mental state. And it leads to what we verbalize, what we communicate, which then leads to our actions. If we believe in hope then, and not our limiting beliefs, then we may be able to have enough courage to show up in the face of adversity. So what is finding your calling? I think we put so much pressure on ourselves on what our calling is, the keyword calling, that we miss out on the most important part, which is the action word. It's in the finding. And so many of us think that there is an answer to everything. There's a right way of doing something or a wrong way, to which pathway is the right or wrong. But I encourage you to consider this mindset shift, to focus on the finding, because it's in the freeing of your mind, not to waste in anxiety or worry or fear, that you allow yourself to be free to explore. And so looking back, I would say that I found that many of my decisions were made outside of my comfort zone. It was really in the unknown, or places in which people said I just didn't belong, where I was the most curious. And so I'd ask myself the question, why not? I wanted to know where my limits were and then try to bust through them. And oftentimes going beyond my preconceived set points in life. And not surprisingly, this is where my greatest growth has also occurred. Man in the arena. This is one of my favorite quotes, which I wanted to share with you. And it resonates with me, especially as an entrepreneur. It's written by Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the woman. I changed it to woman here for based on our event today, who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends herself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if she fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Did I have fear? Yes, absolutely. It's probably not well known, but fear never goes away. It's a very human emotion. What I found to help me is to have more courage than fear, and then go ahead and do what you're going to do anyways. And there will be other people in their own lanes, or in this context, in their own fighting rings, and it may look more attractive, whatever pathway or fight that they're on. It may seem so on the surface, but I assure you that there have been setbacks or failures underneath that may not be so obvious. So I encourage you to focus on your fight. What happens when you do show up is that you build your resilience, grit, and it's like a muscle to be exercised to form new habits. So moving on to the third concept here. So from who you are and what you do, is what you have meaningful for you? So as I moved along in my career, thinking I knew who I was and what I was doing, I admit that I've realized, actually not too long ago, a fallacy in my thought process. So I had come from humble beginnings, and it was always quite enticing to go to good schools, the top tier name brand schools, and to hurry up, to quickly climb that corporate ladder and to move up into a higher socioeconomic bracket. Because in my mind, there was a finish line in my work. I thought that if I crossed it, then I arrived, and then life would be easier. But I came to the realization that life was not easier, and that I was actually not necessarily happier either, by having these grand corporate titles or fancier things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, these things were nice in the beginning, but I recognized that it didn't sustain me, to stay motivated in the long run. So you see, I had eventually realized that my expectations were framed wrongly. So with my personal mission statement that I shared earlier, it was never about pursuing happiness or having an easier life. That was my fallacy. But it was about having a purpose all along. And so a few years ago, I jumped off the corporate pathway and decided to start my own company. And at the same time, I had my first child, and she was born beautiful and healthy. But at her 3rd-month checkup, the pediatrician had said during one of her routine checkups, she's jaundiced. She looks yellow. Why don't you just go to the local hospital and get a blood test done? And so we did. We brought her to the hospital, but one blood test turned into a series of other tests. And then soon we were ushered into this room full of surgeons, of which the head surgeon was a liver specialist, had said, your daughter's liver is failing. We need to admit her into the hospital right now. We need to do a 7-hour procedure tomorrow to slice a piece of her liver, reattach her intestine, and hopefully bile juices will flow, because nothing's flowing right now. And by the way, this surgery has a 99% chance of failure. In a few months, she'll need a liver transplant. It was so matter of fact like that. And you could just imagine, as first-time parents, our world had just turned upside down that very moment. And we collected our emotions and our thoughts. We asked the doctor some pretty basic questions. How many times have you done a liver transplant? How much is this going to cost? It doesn't sound so cheap. And how are your other patients doing? Are they thriving? This was before we hand over our one and only child. And the doctor's response was, I'm good at my job. And for us, it was quite a shocker. At that moment, we decided to embark on a global search. And we did. And we found one of the pioneers of live liver transplants who had actually done thousands of these surgeries. And despite his expertise, he was 60% less in cost than that initial team, who we actually also found out that initial team had done less than 10 of these surgeries. And so we've realized that this is the state of healthcare. Patients are in the dark as they navigate through their healthcare journey. There's no transparency whatsoever. And so when my husband, who donated a piece of his liver to our daughter, was recovering in the ICU after the liver transplant, it became clear to us what DocDoc needed to be to empower patients to make data-informed decisions, just like what we had, data, to choose the right doctor and guide them through their healthcare journey. Because we were actually quite lucky, but no one should depend on luck in finding the right doctor at a most vulnerable time in their life, and make that right choice, right? So I also just wanted to share with you that our daughter, Rand, is thriving today, and she's doing extraordinarily well, and it's just a ray of hope to so many people all around her. Logically, though, it didn't make sense for my husband and I to do this company together. We're not diversified in any way and putting all of our eggs in one basket by doing this company together. But looking around, no one else was doing this, right? And it was a huge problem to solve. And we just found ourselves in this path. I mean, there was no audible voice that told us, we must do this. Ask ourselves, was this our calling? But it was in our hearts and minds, and then also guided by our personal mission statement, that this is what we needed to do. Has it been easy? Far from it. There's plenty of scars that we have endured over the years in building out this company, but we truly believe in this mission. And we found a greater purpose that impacted so many more lives and so many more people at this vulnerable stage in their life where they needed to have a major surgery or whatnot. And it meant more than just to ourselves. And that's what has kept us to keep pressing on, even when the challenges seemed insurmountable. So I wanted to leave you with a beautiful quote. It's actually from a Holocaust survivor named Viktor Frankl, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And I think it sums up simply what I've been aiming to share in my presentation. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself. So with that, thank you very much. And carpe diem, seize the day.